Hey, welcome to A Big Story Rewind. The podcast has undergone a few iterations since 2019. I've sought this mythical, pure conversation with inspiring creators over the years. And each season, I feel I get just that bit closer to having that give and take conversation that I forget I'm actually recording, and I fool myself that we're having a real talk between friends. Well, the show is different now. There's still so many amazing episodes in the archives that I want to share with you. So be prepared for 2 more hosts. There's a lot more talk focused on images appearing on the screen while we were recording, but that stuff really doesn't affect the heart of the story and our guests' unique tales. I hope you enjoy this Big Story Rewind. Thanks for listening. All right. Hey, I'm going to try this. Ready? Boom. All right. Welcome to the Big Story Podcast. I'm Alex Morrissey.
I'm Greg Dufna.
Today we have a wonderful guest. We have Gene Ha with us.
Yeah, hello, everybody. Right.
Hey,
there he is.
Boom. I didn't play the guitar in this.
That's Brian Ballas.
That was me under the camera.
That would be so rad. Wouldn't that be a thing? Like, hey, what? Like you do this like pre-podcast interview saying, so what? Do you play any instruments? Oh yeah, I play this. Okay, well here's the sheet music. We'll record live. Oh. That'd be like what a way to like mug a guest.
So I'm just meeting you here. Play this.
Yeah.
Actually, on a music podcast, that'd be kind of awesome if they had every guest play the theme song at least at the end of the show or something.
That would be fantastic. We should let's change the formatting. Do you play any instruments, Gene? Quick, grab your mandolin. Let's get going.
You can sing it.
Oh man. So Gene, hey, how you doing? We were actually having, as you said, a wonderful little talk about the Dune film and all sorts of cool things before we hit play today. Yeah, I'm still just really fascinated, blown away. I can't remember. I was texting a close friend right after I got out of the movie, and I said, like, so are they like, is Dune like, did they shoot number 2? And he's like, oh no, like they're waiting to find out what the box office return was. And like I was quickly like telling everybody, go see Dune, please. I can't remember that there just seems to be like a bunch of films like in our sort of our youth growing up, like they throw it out there and then you never get the follow-up, like it because it just flops. But, the worst, best, greatest example would be Buckaroo Banzai. We never got to find out what happens. So I think it was a comic book for a while, wasn't it?
You can read it.
I think it became a comic book eventually, but I think it started off as a movie. But
yeah. No, I think
the name was. It was a good movie, but I mean, the name itself and the concept were so strong, it kind of felt like it needed to be expanded just because it was such a good idea, as opposed to anything else about it. I just loved it. It's like you can do anything with it.
It was just one of those cool things. I mean, clearly, when somebody came up, sort of stumbled on a name and was like, I need to write a screenplay about this because like it's a screenplay worthy name. So where are you in this nation of ours, Gene?
I live outside Chicago in Berwyn, Illinois, which if you watch Svengoolie, you've probably heard it used as a punchline.
Svengoolie.
Wow.
Yeah, Berwyn. That's me. That's where I live.
Nice. I love Chicago. That's actually one of my. That city is unbelievably cool. You have C2. You have C2E2 this weekend.
Weekend after this weekend. So yeah.
Okay. So it's coming up. Are you going?
Yes. I will be Artist Alley, table K9, one of the easiest ones to remember.
Nice. Yeah, that's super easy. You might. Everyone's gonna all the Whovians will come up to you. They'll be like, hey, no, I'm a comic dude.
So I thought it would be the next Doctor Who.
Yeah, right. Oh yeah, no, that's true. I actually did hear you were going to be the next Doctor Who. We'll just keep that rumor rolling.
Yeah.
My first contact with Whovians, I guess. I don't know what they prefer to be called. I mean, I'm a huge Doctor Who fan, but it was a New York comic convention. I think it's like 1984, 84, 85-ish.
Oh, wow.
I went there because Art Adams was there. I'm like, oh wow, how often were you going to get to see Art Adams? You know, little did I know, a lot eventually, but it was one of those things where I'm like, okay, cool, I'll go. And this kid comes up to me totally decked out like Tom
Baker. Yeah,
Tom Baker. So he's got everything going on, the hat, everything, and he walks up and he goes, "Jelly baby," and I was like, what's going on here? Like, it was so bizarre. He was a really nice kid. And it was good. I mean, it tasted good, a Jelly baby. I'll give it up. So that was my first, because otherwise, like, Doctor Who was that weird thing on PBS, like late at night, and that music came on and freaked me out.
I grew up in South Bend. We had Doctor Who on both the Chicago Public Television station we got and the local South Bend station we got. And the Tom Baker Doctor Who outfit was a really good outfit for certain types of tall, skinny geek guys in my neighborhood to wear if they were trying to get some action with other geeks. So.
Oh, okay. Because that qualifier was really important.
Yeah. I was like, what? I want to live there.
Wow, that's so funny. Yeah. Well, yeah. So you got sort of double dipping of so you could have two worlds of Doctor Who stories going on in your life at the same time.
Double dipping.
Yeah. And I love, a bit like Buckaroo Banzai. Like, I'm not totally in love with the movie Buckaroo Banzai, but I love the concept.
Yeah, me too.
And I'm also the same way with Doctor Who, where it's like, oh, that's so great. And then I'll watch an episode and it's kind of like, that's a great character. And you were not working on that story plot at all, were you? You just, that's not really the point of the TV show.
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's a lot of that sort of last second solution kind of stuff where, you know, like he's been holding this secret card the whole time. You're like, all right, well, cool. But, you know, but I think, yeah, definitely. But, you know, the actors have always been Doctor Who, have always sold, you know, the character so well that you kind of get on board for the fun and excitement.
Yeah. Do I have a sensible explanation for every season of Doctor Who?
Oh, hit me.
Okay, so a bit like Murder, She Wrote, Doctor Who is a person who goes from world to world and era to era, and somehow wherever he shows up, some type of cosmic threat shows up that's trying to destroy the world.
Yeah.
And it's just by accident, almost always coincidental.
It is.
Yeah. And if you know, like, the famous fan theory on Murder, She Wrote, it's that the murder novelist is the one who's committing all the murders and then frames somebody every week.
Oh, I love that. That's a brilliant concept.
Yeah. But Doctor Who has the advantage that he or she is able to warp time. So
right.
Doctor Who loves to be a know-it-all, loves to impress their companion with being able to fix any situation and knowing everything about the situation, even though he's never met them before.
It makes complete sense. Yeah. No, it makes complete sense. You're like, oh, yeah. Of course. Like, you're like, yeah, you know, Angela Lansbury's going, well, that person did it. Well, yeah, because you wrote the whole thing to make it seem like that person did it.
Right. And therefore, Doctor Who is like, a few days or months even, or years before he goes off on that adventure, engineers the crisis to happen, and then pretends doesn't know anything about it, takes their companion there, and then says, oh, look what happened happened at our vacation spot. Oh, this is horrible. Who will solve it?
That's job security.
How to solve it.
Just to get the attention from some schlub who he's dragging around the universe in time.
Right. Which is totally in character for Doctor Who.
Totally.
I love that. Oh, that's awesome. Oh, that's good. I love wacky theories about televisions and movie. Like,
I don't think that's a theory.
Oh, it's pretty it's on Wikipedia. All right.
Yeah, it should be soon.
It'll definitely.
Whoever's watching, please put that on Wikipedia.
Gene's writing it up right now on Wiki.
And so South Bend.
Yeah.
Awesome. Very cool. That's a college town, I believe.
Oh yeah, Notre Dame.
Yeah, small school, and little not school. Nobody's ever heard of it. So I would guess if it's that sort of large, sort of cool of a town, you had probably early access to comic books.
Oh, so there was on the rough post-industrial, and this is the 70s, post-industrial south side of South Bend.
Mm-hmm.
There was a strip where the abandoned factories were, and the strip clubs were, and then someone next, like two storefronts down from one of the strip clubs, opened up a comic shop. It was an old hippie who looked like I BS you not, who looked like the original Marvel Handbook Angar the Screamer guy. Yeah, kind of a long ponytail, scraggly beard, the fake Indian fringe vest and stuff like that. And it smelled like cat pee. It was the classic pre-modern comic shop. But it was so exciting.
But he had one. You had a comic shop. We had 5 and Dimes back in the 70s. Where I lived.
Yeah. That was like probably around 1982 or 3 that shop opened up. I grew up in the 70s, and at that point it was Hook's drugstore that I got my comic shops at.
Gotcha. Yeah, it was definitely it was just a 5 and dime.
I was like, man, Gene is as old as we are, huh, Alex?
I believe so. I believe we share a similar age bracket.
I was born a few weeks after the moon landing.
Okay, I watched the moon landing. So
I missed that. even though I wouldn't have remembered it either way.
I don't remember it. I just there's pictures of me, watching the moon landing, and I've grew up my whole life. They're saying, "Look,
where's the picture? I want to see it."
I'm like, no, I'm not showing you that picture. Are you kidding? I'm never showing you that picture. Here, hold on a second. Just to be somewhat timely. Oh my gosh, I have a lot of tabs open. This is what I get for trying to research a guest.
Right. While you did that, I was looking at my computer screen saying, how many tabs does he have? Oh, no, it's on his computer screen, right?
There we go. Ready?
Yeah.
Damn.
We were looking for it, huh?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, except he had a ponytail. That's pretty much what he looked like.
Wow.
I like it that he's kind of got underwear and pants going on at the same time.
Well, he's a superhero.
Is he? He's a villain.
Yeah. Well, super villain.
So you had the 5 and dime, and then eventually you had a comic shop. It's like, were you like into comics, or did something get you into comics, or did somebody get you into
origin story?
Oh, honestly, by middle school, I was starting to fall a little bit out of comics. And then my friend Lowell Francis, who's now a figure inside of the international role-playing game community, at the time, I entered middle school with him, and he'd just been to England, where he has relatives, came back after the end of summer, and brought back a pile of 2000 AD / Judge Dredd comics.
Judge Dredd.
Like a pile this thick in his backpack. He was just carrying around with him. And when we were bored in class, I would just ask if I could borrow another 2000 AD and read it.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And then he would loan me also, as he discovered them, he would then share his discoveries of things like Miracle Man by Alan Moore and Swamp Thing. And actually, I think he's the one who introduced me to the Frank Miller Daredevil comics.
Okay.
In a way that I recognize it as Frank Miller Daredevil comics.
Yeah.
I'd actually been a Daredevil fan in the 70s during the Gene Colan run.
Mm-hmm.
Then they replaced him with a new artist who kind of drew in his style, but crappier. And I thought, oh, this guy will never get anywhere. This Frank Miller guy's awful. And I totally forgot about him. Until my friend Lowell Francis then showed me what he developed into by about 1984, 1983. Right. And it was like, oh, wow, he's a genius. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't there like when, Frank Miller first started, like I got those issues pretty quick, but it was probably within the first year-ish, maybe right after the first year is when I started picking that book up, because that was around the time that Sienkiewicz was doing Moon Knight. So there was of that, those guys were kind of really burning, some coolness into the comics on characters that nobody seemed to care about. But that was that's but man, those, to be able to get your hands on those 2000, like to see those 2000 ADs.
Oh yeah, and they were printed on such crappy paper.
Oh, really?
Very expensive.
Wow. Yeah, it's but that's got to be. I mean, what a because like for me, comic books didn't have much of a sort of a, like they didn't exist outside of whatever the American sort of realm of comic books were. So like to get an idea that there was something greater out there, which probably, I'm going to guess, opened your mind up to indie comics, probably, you know, made it easier to accept that. Like for me, I remember my buddy handing me like, I don't know, it was like Nexus number 1 or 2, you know, and it was black and white. And I was just completely outraged that there was no color. Like I couldn't get it, you know? So yeah, because I mean, like, because Gary is a huge fan of Mage, you know,
and so is Gene.
Yeah. So
I read it on his wiki.
Oh, there you go.
Like another comic that Lowell Francis introduced me to. So yeah.
And it's like, you know, and I didn't get into that stuff until I got into college, because that's when I met people like Gary and Phil, who's not here today, but those guys are like, oh no, you got to read this stuff too, you know, and then you read it and you go, oh my, like it was so cool.
Such a good comic.
Yeah. So the best thing about being in Notre Dame wasn't so much that it made it culturally hip enough to have a comic shop, which I don't think Notre Dame really was what caused that so much. Notre Dame at the time especially did not like mixing with South Bend. They actually had like a no man's zone surrounding the college that they didn't develop to prevent college students from wandering off campus.
Okay.
Yeah, it's starting to get built up now, but at the time it was just like you had to walk like half a mile to get off campus. So people from South Bend didn't walk into Notre Dame. People from Notre Dame didn't walk off campus easily.
Super interesting.
But Lowell was a son of a college professor.
Oh.
So that's a big connection that got me into comics and having Notre Dame.
Oh, okay. Well, that's super interesting. And your facility as an artist is phenomenal, but like, were you that way early, or were you like, were you just like the kid who could draw and like everybody was like, get Gene to draw it?
Kind of. There was almost always somebody who was about as good at me inside of any school I've been in. So in middle school, there's another kid named David Collada who drew a little better than me. And I was always competitive, like, I'm going to become better than David Collada. My older brother could always draw better than me. In high school, I didn't take the painting classes and stuff like that. So, I mean, and I didn't get the right. Yeah, I was just persistent. I wasn't the most talented. I was just the most persistent because everyone else found better things to do eventually.
Well, that's the thing. Like the persistence is a huge thing. Like, I mean, because you can have a great sort of learning curve where you can kind of pick something up and get like 80% good quickly. It's that pushing past that 80% in what's the drive to get there, you know? And if it's humiliating David Collada, then like you definitely gotta do that.
And David Collada is we're both from South Bend, but we're both Chicagoans now. And he's doing great things that have almost nothing to do with art. He's an advocate for controlling the rather corrupt Illinois public utilities.
Okay.
So I get emails from all the time talking about like, here's what the power company is doing right now and how they're trying to change legislation in Springfield, Illinois to screw us over, and here's why the legislation's evil. I mean, he's doing great stuff. It just has nothing to do with him drawing me and him drawing orcs anymore.
Right. Nice. Orcs. You said orcs?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, we once did a competition where we both drew the coolest orc we could, and frankly, his was a little better.
Oh no.
Son of a bitch.
So, no, he's good, but he found better things to do, things to do.
Maybe he could portray the utilities people orcs in his newsletter, and that way people can bond with that, you know, and they can get his chops back.
Oh man.
I don't know, maybe just pass that one on to him, Gene. Maybe we'll re-envision the whole battle against corruption in one cartoon.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know how many kids are like watching a show, because there's like advice I give to kids about going to the arts and stuff.
Yeah.
Like people who haven't graduated from high school yet. Essentially, if your goal is you want to become rich and famous and you want to do it through art, that is just a horrible plan.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll second that.
Especially the rich part. Yeah. I mean, you can make it if you work hard, and you can possibly make a really good living, or not a really good living, a good living in art. But you really don't, if you want to make a good living through the arts, you probably don't want to do it by being an artist. You probably want to do it by owning a company that hires artists.
Yes.
So business skills are really useful.
Yep.
And if you really want to get into that actual making of art, you have to be willing to make less money and suffer for it, and sometimes struggle to even get a job, and still think, at least I'm in the arts, so it's worth it. You have to love it so much you're willing to fail at it a lot of the time.
Totally. I've always like sort of likened it to the big thing that you can kind of, I guess, pull away from it is that it's being an artist or a creator of any type is typically not a scalable enterprise. Yeah. So you can't draw 2 comic book pages a day. You can't draw 10 comic book pages a day. So the hard part, or I should say at the same time. So that's the hardest part about the whole thing, is because you could be incredibly gifted and talented. You know, like you could be Adam Hughes, but you can't do 3 Adam Hughes covers at a time. Like it just doesn't work that way.
There's a reason why people still speak in reverence of how Jack Kirby was able to do a whole issue in 3 days or 3 or 4 pages a day, because that doesn't happen. He's the only one.
I think Ron Lim was the last comic book artist who like could crank pages out, you know, just like, oh yeah, Ron did 6 pages for us on this book. And you're like, what? You know, like in one day, you know, but it's like, but it was just like, I think I had this epiphany, like, I don't know, like a month ago talking to somebody, and I realized like my model for drawing comics when I was doing it was completely wrong. It was get up and draw a comic book page a day. That was the model, because that was what you were told was what that's expected. We expect you to do a page a day. Okay, cool. What I didn't say my model was get up and draw a comic book page by 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And that was like, so you don't give yourself that framework to say, oh yeah, like I need to be done and have a life, you know, versus, you know, have dinner and then go back and work for 4 more hours or whatever the hours, you know, demand. And, you know, and the interesting thing about like being an artist and of any type is that as you do it, the more you do it, the greater your facility to do it. So you get better and better. Yeah. And that doesn't always mean you get faster and faster. Yeah. It just means that you're like, oh, I can now see that next level in, and you start, so you can focus in on more things or detail or whatever that is. And that costs more time. It typically doesn't go like, oh, I know how to simplify this and do it faster. I mean, because you're a detail guy. Like your work is, you know, it's pretty detailed, man. Was that always your like model, like for you? Like were you always like, I gotta like get in there?
No, but it's partially it's funny how the direction I went in was shaped by the stories that were coming out when I broke into comics in the 90s, or like around 1992, 94. And it tended to be this was essentially before movies could do things like blow up a city and make it look convincing. Mm-hmm. For the most part. So it was still, if you wanted to do an epic story like that, comics was the place to do it. There weren't a lot of other options. And so things like Akira was like a big example. I saw that a little before I broke in. I read that a few years before I broke in, and it was like, wow, this is amazing. And we can only do this in comics. Mm-hmm. And then I began getting the stories where like, one of the first stories that grew was a Green Lantern issue where essentially I blew up Coast City / San Diego. Yeah. So I found like a real book on aerial photos of California, found a really good shot of San Diego, and then I did not trace, but I drew that photograph pretty much, and then drew giant explosions in it, destroying San Diego. Mm-hmm. And it was only much, much later that I realized, oh, that's the hotel complex where they have San Diego Comic-Con. So yeah, I blew up San Diego Comic-Con in comics. It's one of my first jobs in comics.
Nice. How prophetic of you, right? Yeah,
it blew up in a different way, in a good way.
It totally did. I remember going out there for the first time, and I just remember everybody saying like, "Just be prepared." Like this is 94-ish, you know, maybe one out there. They're like, just be ready, because nothing on the East Coast was that large yet. It just hadn't happened, and it was mind blowing.
I first got there in 1999, and I promise you, every year since, people will always be nostalgic about how San Diego Comic-Con used to be 5 to 10 years before.
Right.
And if you go if I went in 2019, and people were still like, 10 years ago, wasn't this crazy?
Yeah, right. Totally. It was, I mean, there was some homespun charm to it. You would it's like, oh, you want to go there. You just somehow got Clydeen Nee's phone number.
Oh, yeah.
However, and you got her phone number and you called her and you said, hey, can I get a table in Artist Alley? And she's like, sure. And that was it. Like, there was little to no, song and dance in the matter. So it was a different time.
Yeah. If anyone who's younger than us wants to know what comic conventions were like around 1997 or 1995, for the most part, go to a local swap meet.
That's a good one.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And then they add panels on comic books. So yeah.
Lots of dealers, very few people in costumes.
Might be in a school gymnasium or something, or a community center.
Well, like, so yeah, I mean, like, so that one, that convention I mentioned in New York was like in a hotel, conference room. Like, it was super small. There's like John Buscema and Art Adams and a bunch of people in there, but it was super tiny. Which I like those kinds of shows. I mean, we still have those, like, in smaller event, like where I live in Asheville, we have like small conventions around. Some dude puts them on, and they're easy to get to, and they're real. They're small, they're for families, and go pick up back issues. Yeah,
it's yesterday I was writing to the Minnesota Comic Book Association, saying, hey, if you're interested, I'd love to be a guest again at the MSP Comic-Con in Minnesota, because it just has that feel and it's just so much fun. And it's literally under the concrete bandstand at the Minnesota State Fair.
Wow.
Yeah, okay. No climate control, which is usually fine for the time of year they hold it, but when it isn't, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's like you said, if an artist contacts them, like especially a local artist contacts them and says, hey, can I just get a table? Sometimes they'll just say, if they have an extra table, they'll be like, sure.
Yeah.
Or, it's a small fee if it is, I can't remember, but it's really neighborly.
We used to, so early on, hey, pro tip to anybody trying to get into conventions, like the smaller scale convention.
I remember this.
When we were in college and right after college, so it was right around right before I got into the business. I remember, so we would go around, we'd go to the shows, and this is the New York Comic Convention, which became New York Comic Con, and we would just sweet talk our way into the thing without paying. So we'd find like what we thought, like, hey, these girls are cute. We'd go talk up the girls, and then they would give us the stamps to get in, and then we'd walk around and we'd look for empty tables, and then we'd say, hey, can we sit here? And they're like, they would look at the schedule and be like, yeah, there's no one here. You can have the table. We're like, okay, great. And we'd hunker down and we would just like sit there for the weekend and have our version of a comic convention. So, so you can hustle your way into a comic show, I think. It was, I don't know, like it's a great vibe. I mean, comic conventions are a great vibe because there's nothing nicer than seeing the light in the eyes of people who love comic books, even if they don't love what you do specifically, the fact that they just love comics and they want to talk about the comics and they want to get in, and I always think, like, on my side of it all, like when I went to conventions, young, and how excited I was to see comic books or whatever, and how that sort of pave that path of whether it was to become a professional or to become a person who's just a lifelong fan of comics. I think they're great. Yeah.
I should mention, I think I was either a freshman in high school or maybe in middle school still when I went to my first comic convention, and it would be many years till I went to another one. It was on Notre Dame campus in a building they usually had an indoor basketball court. It was just like a cheapo 70s structure with a basketball court in it, and they took down, I'm sorry. It was the Knights of Columbus Hall. There was a gaming convention they have at Notre Dame. So it was the Knights of Columbus Hall, tiny place in South Bend, and they brought in comic book artists. So there's the first real professional comic book artist I'd ever met in my life. And I was all excited, and they brought him up onto the little stage area and had a question and answer session. And one of the kids in the audience with me asked, "Are you guys rich?" And then both the artists began laughing really hard in a way that scared me, which kept me from considering comics as a real profession for years.
Oh my gosh, it's hilarious. You know, it's so funny because like the you know, and I don't know how many people, like, I mean, you've mentioned the sort of the wealth factor of comic book creation, but what drove me so hard early on was I would figure out, like, I don't know how I heard, but like that, you know, how much money John Byrne made drawing comic books back in the, you know, in the early to mid 80s. And I'm like you can have a really good life, you know, drawing comic books. Like that was like, so he was like that bullseye target. You know, but the modern Jack Kirby he was, you know, cranking comics out. So yeah, it's just so that was I've never got even remotely close to John Byrne. My dad lived in the same town as him. That's as close I ever got to John Byrne.
Oh man.
I was a huge fan of his work as a kid. Were you big into Byrne?
Yeah, I was just kind of obsessed with him.
Mm-hmm.
Though I'm going to say, because of the way I wanted to be draw realistically, and I loved his style, I didn't understand the difference between why reality didn't look like his style.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially, a lot of art school for me was frankly unlearning any John Byrne influence I had, or as much as I could. There are certain things he does where it's like, oh, that's not how a real face works. It looks great when he does it, but that's not something I can build on unless I'm going to become a John Byrne clone.
Right. He was like, I mean, he, like Kirby, developed that shorthand of being able to solve the visual problems in a way that they can do it, you know, with, you know, whatever minimum of strokes that they needed to achieve that and sell it. Like because we, you know, listen, we looked at it, you look at Byrne work and you go, this is great. Like, it's fantastic. Give me more, you know? And it was one of those things. And I can totally see what you're saying, because I mean, if you put a piece of paper over it and try to like dissect it, it would probably be an interesting study.
Yeah. I mean, this is something I actually did as a kid, where I took a kind of related example. I took a Charles Schulz drawing and I traced it, and then I tried to figure out where the bones were inside the heads of the different characters and how the anatomy worked on a Charles Schulz character. And that's probably like in grade school, so like fifth grade or something when I did this. And I realized, when Charles Schulz draws a face in profile, the eyes are at a certain level, and then when he draws from the front, they're at a higher level. They like the eye sockets move in the skull when he draws it from different angles. And if I'd done that with a John Byrne drawing and try to figure out how the anatomy worked, I would have realized a lot sooner the things I'd have to learn to get beyond John Byrne and not be a John Byrne clone.
Yeah, right.
It's just, it's weird. It's beautiful, but it's very weird how his drawings work.
No, it's true. But you know, I mean, like John, like he really fired off a whole generation. Like our generation got fired off, you know, with John Byrne, X-Men, and, you know, in Fantastic Four, like that kind of, you know, along with maybe, you know, Perez doing, you know, the the Teen Titans and his run on the Avengers, like those kinds of books at that time, like just fired this, you know, this what we'll call the image generation, you know, like for better, for worse.
Well, okay. I'm going to mention, I was also a huge Sienkiewicz fan at the time.
Okay.
I saw his New Mutant stuff, and I just completely fell in love with it. And I realized he wasn't drawing comic book characters; he was drawing people, which I had not really seen much inside of comic books at that point. I mean, he draw things in an unromantic way, like in a not idealized way, but still make them look beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So he's still a foundation. The stuff I learned from him in high school is still a foundation I can work on, expand on today.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, it's odd, in the last 10 years, I mean, I've learned things about Jack Kirby where he's become kind of a foundation I can work on. Just like the way he abstracts anatomy, kind of works. Once I learned the realism, I was then able to go back to Jack Kirby and learn lessons from that in a way I couldn't when I was younger.
We you know, Gary and I talk about this. Actually, we talk about it a lot, about the idea that like once you learn and you have that, whatever that sort of structural element, you're then able to, you know,
deconstruct it a little bit, make it simpler.
You can abstract from that point, in a sort of a rigorous methodology where it works. Like it doesn't, you don't go like, well, that's cartooning. It's like you can still do something that has sort of structure and works, but not be, as you say, like that idealized kind of version. But you blew my head. Oh wait, go ahead. I'll go back to this. It's an interesting thing.
A few years ago, there was a traveling Alex Ross Museum exhibition going around where it had all these giant paintings by him.
Yeah.
And he's, in the last few years, he's been, probably the last 10 years, I guess, he's been experimenting with something fascinating where he'll take essentially the weird, slightly non-human anatomy of a lot of artists and do a painting where he holds onto that anatomy.
Oh.
So like he, let me see, Dave Cockrum.
Yeah.
Dave Cockrum has the kind of weird eye sockets where the eyebrows kind of do things that aren't really possible in humans. And he did some paintings based on, like, say, Storm, based on the Dave Cockrum version with Dave Cockrum anatomy, but it still works. And he does in this kind of almost photorealistic, fully painted, rendered, full color style. And it's beautiful. In an extreme case, he took Rob Liefeld X-Force illustration or style illustration. Yeah. And he kept anatomy, and then he painted it photorealistically, which was beautiful and also kind of hilarious. Just like, it was.
That's awesome.
Well, I think Rob is like a cartoonist. You know what I mean? Like he's telling comic book stories as a cartoonist. He's not there like saying like figuring out like all the dimensions and the putting everything in perspective and okay, here's something that's going to live in a real world. But you said something which totally, like, I never even thought about this before, but like you might have, I think we might crack the code here, Gene. Hold on, ready? So John Byrne, Titan, Bill Sienkiewicz, Titan. These guys are just like phenomenal titans of, the comic book industry, but they're both Neil Adams proteges.
Oh yeah.
But look how different in direction they both went.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay, John Byrne was never a good Neil Adams imitator.
Right.
So in that sense, he was kind of freed up by the fact that he couldn't even get close to it.
Right.
The problem that Bill Sienkiewicz ran it, well, I mean, and I'm going to say also, if you look at like the really early pre-Marvel work of John Byrne, it's got pretty much all the virtues of the later stuff. He pretty much developed this beautiful cartoony style early on. Bill Sienkiewicz's problem for his first, 5-10 years in the industry was he was the best Neil Adams imitator in the business. Yeah. But he was never Neil Adams, so he was never going to, make his mark until he finally figured out all the things he was going to do that were beyond that. And
which is, I think, why Moon Knight is such an amazing series, because it's not only is it a great story, but it's just it's seeing this artist that we all know in time is like one of the greatest, to put anything down on paper, and to see it evolve from what he was doing to what we all know as, Bill Sienkiewicz, and then, then go on to the New Mutants and then do Electro Assassin, like that sort of like those 3 chapters, they're just going to tell the whole story.
I'm going to say also that one of the exciting things about a lot of the artists who came up during the 70s and 60s is almost all of them were New Yorkers. Mm-hmm. And they lived there at a time when New York was the advertising capital of the world. Yeah. And therefore they would hang out with like the Society of Illustrators, and they wouldn't just hang out with comic book people. If they wanted to, they could go beyond the comic books world. And that's what Bill Sienkiewicz did. So he would hang out with all these world famous illustrators and go to life drawing sessions with them, or hang out at some type of club meeting, have drinks with them, and learn tricks from them. So like another one of my art heroes outside comics is Mark English. Yeah. And I was talking about how like, oh, you seem to have like a Mark English. I asked Bill, like, you seem to have a Mark English influence. He's like, oh yeah. I definitely do, because we hung out blah 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 at these times and like that, and we'd meet all the time, and we were in New York blah blah blah, and he was a great guy, and he taught me a lot of tricks. It's like, so jealous. Oh yeah, so effing jealous.
I mean, like, you mentioned Gene Colan earlier. He was our teacher in our college. Oh, wow. So like, it's this weird kind of thing where you can appreciate it, but you can't really see like how fortunate you are, at the time. And now we look back, we're like, oh my gosh, like why were we not doing this or doing that with this guy, So like it's crazy, but and you're right, the access to these talents is really quite fantastic in New York, especially going back in the 70s or even in the 80s. Because you got in the business around the same time I did, so the business was still pretty small in the 90s. In the terms of the people and
but they were really expanding out the use of FedEx overnight packages at that point, which created opportunities for guys like me. So
yeah, no, that's a huge. So how was it? Like, how was your process of getting in? Because for folks like me being in New York City, it was not that it wasn't easy to get in, but I could just go up to the offices and go sit there and talk with the people. So I don't have a sort of an equal sort of like, oh, well, I lived in Chicago and I had to mail things in. And then once a year I was able to go see a single person at a convention and hope that they would remember me,
my connect at that point was mainly my local comic shop owners.
Okay.
So there's two guys in Ferndale who'd started up a comic shop, and then they created kind of like a branch office in literally a used clothing store near my campus. The art school I went to, this College for Creative Studies. So I went to this place where you could buy cool used leather jackets, and there was a guy sitting next to a bookshelf or kind of like a magazine rack with a bunch of comics on. I was like, what's this? And it's like, oh yeah, I own Comics Cafe. I'm the co-owner of Comics Cafe in Ferndale. And then he began to talk to me about the comic book industry, and that's how I learned everything.
Oh my God. Okay. That's
so
you had a guru. You had like on your adventure, on your tale of adventure, like you came upon the sage guru who like gave you some information that like for your quest.
Yeah. And like a lot of comic shop owners across the parts of America that aren't rife with comic book artists all over the place. So essentially everywhere but New York. He knew who all the local comic book artists were. And he knew about all the comic events like comic conventions. So he and Hassan was the guy at the magazine rack, and then I got to meet his co-owner Todd Johnson later. Both of them have dropped out of comics since. But yeah, they just hanging out at their comic shop and chatting with them, chatting with other customers. A few of them were comic book artists and stuff like that. Was my into learning about how comics work.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay, that's cool. And then so did you so you were sending in submissions, to.
Well, okay. One of the first conversations I had with Hassan was asking, wow, but can you make a living in comics? Because I was still under the impression from middle school that you can't. And he's like, oh no, people are actually getting rich drawing comics nowadays. And he began explaining the royalty system. And it was like, oh, well, I don't need to make that much money as much as, Jim Lee or Rob Liefeld. But if I can make a fraction of that money, I can make a good living, and I don't have to do paintings for shopping malls anymore. This is before I graduated, but I'd already started my commercial career. So and then sent in my samples to Marvel, and as my backup plan to DC. Marvel sent a brutal rejection letter.
Oof,
awesome.
Yeah, form letter. But I deserved it. I should mention I wasn't quite ready yet.
Right.
But then I got lucky that the editor at DC who saw my stuff was Neil Posner, who wrote back and said, "You're not ready for DC, but I'd like to see more stuff." And he mentored me through mail and over the phone until I was ready.
Yeah, Neil was a super great guy, huge heart. I'd have been in the business, I think, for 2 years. And somehow, I guess one of the editors made copies of whatever my pages were and handed them to him. And I ended up getting a rejection letter from Neil, even though I was working for DC at the time, which was hilarious. So I thought that was pretty funny. I was like, I guess that's not, I guess he doesn't think I'm ready, but who knows? Maybe I wasn't ready.
I should also mention, I never got to meet Neil.
Oh, no, really?
Yeah, he died like 2 or 3 years after that, and I hadn't been to a New York convention by that time. So
okay,
it was like a year after he died or something like that when I first got to New York.
Yeah, he was super, super nice guy. Like just really just like, as sweet as can be. And like, I think it's just the mentoring part, like he really did care about like, I think he was just empathetic, to the people trying to get into the business, and which is important. Yeah, no, 'cause I remember seeing your stuff. I mean, I do remember seeing your stuff showing up like in mid '90s, and I remember like instantly hating you. And but it was, but like, I mean, you see people like, they're just people who pop up and you're like, oh man, what a great look, what a great thing, what's going on here. And you just kind of like, so then you automatically put those people on your radar to keep an eye on what they're up to. Cause I mean, we were talking about like being John Byrne clones, but like, what were your biggest influences, like kind of like putting together your early kind of template of who you were as an artist?
I mean, Matt Wagner was a big influence.
Cool.
Bill Sienkiewicz, though, he felt kind of out of reach as an influence sometimes, but I always kept him in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And he still kind of feels exactly the same distance out of reach. Essentially, the more I know, the more I understand how good he is.
Yeah.
Actually, and this is an interesting one. 2 years before I seriously tried to break into comics, I had some Barry Windsor Smith comics.
Ooh.
And I began trying to imitate his style, but adapting to my own style.
Yeah.
And then I finally got to a point where it's like, oh, I think I've got it. It's my style, but it's influenced. It has some of the virtues of what I like about Barry Windsor Smith, but it's mine.
Yeah. And
then I lost the drawings. I couldn't find them.
Oh, no.
So if I hadn't lost those drawings, I would have turned into a very different artist. But
so there's a Rosetta Stone artwork out there?
No, some of my friends did have copies of it. I found out later, photocopies. So I was able to see it, and I was able to kind of see the path I didn't take. But it would have been a lot more fluid ink lines and stuff like that, and kind of bolder Barry Windsor Smith cross-hatching instead of kind of the choppier, harsher cross-hatching I developed when I did break into comics.
But it's funny. I mean, it's funny. The second you said that, I can actually see what you were talking. Like when you mentioned the Barry, the Barry Windsor Smith part, like I could totally see like where like there are elements of that kind of feel, like how he like creates sort of like renders a texture, like in black and white over something. So I can see that. But it's but I mean, but how heartbreaking is it for you to like, I guess at the time to go like, I've lost the key. This is this is my map. That's hilarious. Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, I was very big into like the forensically sort of dissecting artwork. Like if I would like, see somebody's work and I'd be like, okay, how are they constructing this? How are they getting to this final result? And that was always a big learning process for me. Did you do that work?
Some of it was okay. So at the time I broke into comics, what we eventually would at the time call the image style was just literally called the style.
Yeah.
And Kevin Dooley was when he assigned me my first inker, said, "Oh, hey, your new inker can draw in the style." And it's like, this is back when we used to have phone conversations with editors, and I said, the style? What is the style? And he had explained it to me, and it's kind of like, and I really didn't. I liked some artists in the style, but I didn't want to become part of that style.
Yeah.
The Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee, Todd McFarlane style of inking and crosshatching and stuff like that. But I did figure I wanted to kind of do that three-dimensional punch, that kind of, the feeling of fully formed roundedness that came from doing crosshatching. So my style was essentially a reaction to wanting to accomplish that, but not do it in the way that those guys were doing it.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And if you look at the next few years of it, my cross-hatching style kind of went in the opposite direction of Barry Windsor Smith and also those guys, and just became super finer and finer and finer, but also in kind of I actually began emulating the hatching, cross-hatching, and what I call negative hatching, or cross-hatching with white instead of with black.
Yeah.
Style of American Currency.
That's cool.
Yeah, and I would take bills or other things, kind of lithograph type things, and take them to a photocopy shop and just blow them up 200%, then take that drawing and blow it up 200% until I had like a dollar bill this big, and I could see how the technique was.
The engraving technique.
Yeah. And just kind of doing the Franklin Booth type of thing, but in comics. But it doesn't. Franklin Booth in general, and also that type of dollar bill rendering style, does not work well in general with comic book coloring, and really, really works badly with 90s style comics coloring. So I had to abandon that.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I mean, because I mean, like I said, I mean, I definitely noticed that facility in your work, that sense of sort of detailed rendering, that ability to kind of dimensionalize your work, and you still have that today, even though like your approach and your sort of your actual artwork style is different when it comes to how you render your work, but
yeah,
there's a solidity, like you're, I mean, like I would say that like a defining characteristic would be your ability to solidify an object, whether the object is a person or a box, you know.
Yeah. I mean, the way I define it is that the vision in my head is sculptural. It feels, there's, I'm going to get all weirdy scientific now, but there's different visual centers in the head, and the main one I depend on for drawing is the one that's sees in black and white in grayscale and looks for sculptural forms.
Right. Yeah.
So that's always a vision in my head, and then I want to add color to that afterward. So the early cross-hatching work was an attempt to do that. Then when I started doing the Starman marker style, and then later on Photoshop style, and then my latest experiments, it's always been an attempt to get that kind of three-dimensional, heavy light shadow feeling across on the page.
Yeah.
Yeah, the vision's always kind of the same, but the technique changes over time. Let me see. I'm gonna look for a page that I can actually show you right now without any trouble.
Well, I mean, okay. Yeah, I'll put this Batman thing back up, but like, I mean, there's just this sense of like physical world, and like I said, think you said, like that grayscale. Like, I mean,
I can see that Matt Wagner feel in there, though, the painted feel that Matt Wagner does.
Oh, yeah, I still have this huge love of kind of a random speckle in my artwork. Yeah, which is literally part of the thing I loved about Matt Wagner's work. Here's an illustration I did for Baltimore Comic-Con.
Oh, that's cool.
Sweet.
Though they couldn't use it because they were afraid of using the likeness of Michael K. Thomas, the actor of Omar from The Wire.
R.I.P. Yeah. It's
I love the blurriness in the background, giving it that shallow depth of field.
Yeah. I like the other thing is another important thing on my how I think of visuals is it's important to draw the eye where you want the attention to be. And I like blurriness not so much because it creates the depth of field, because it draws the eye to the thing that's in focus.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's one of the great things about, you know, your depth of field. I mean, you have that, and if you are bringing that into your actual two-dimensional artwork, that's a real great tool.
Oh yeah, I mean, whether I'm doing whatever level of technique I'm doing and stuff like that, a lot of it is I know enough artists, genius artists, where I can say I know somebody who's better at me than almost anything at almost any specific skill you can name, and some artists who are better at almost everything than me. Like you mentioned it earlier, Adam Hughes and also Alex Rosser. When they want to, they can pretty much do anything I do, but better.
Well, listen, those guys, yeah, sons of bitches is what they are.
Yeah, they are.
I've seen Alex Ross do quick caricatures in a cartoony style, and it's kind of like, you're a realist. You're not supposed to be that good at that. You jerk.
Stop that. Stop it.
I'll bet you're better than me, and I specialize in quick caricatures.
And he's probably really good on a skateboard too, that bastard.
He's also a great graphic designer, so it's
anyway. One of my first...
Okay, wait. Look, I just finish off the thought. The thing I'm better at than almost anybody else in the world is drawing a detailed scene and drawing the eye to the part of the picture I want you to.
Right.
So it doesn't slow down the storytelling too much.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, your sense of ability to control, you know, the setting, the direction with the composition, and how you are, you know, sort of executing that. It is your secret weapon, you know. Although you've just told everybody this, so now there's some 20-year-old out there who's going to treat you like your 7th grade orc drawing buddy and come after you. I mean, my first, like, I was back in the day when the style was the thing. I was hanging out with Dave Johnson at his place, and he and Alex Ross are close buddies, and Alex had made an action figure of Dave, like in in a blister pack, made all the card artwork and everything, and shipped it. And Dave had just opened it up like that day when he got it. It was unbelievable. And like, this is the guy who we're all going like, man, like he can do anything. So he's terribly talented. Speaking of Adam, have you, and I'm sure someone has said this to you, but have you guys collaborated so you can do an aha piece?
An editor tried to do this for I think it was like a 1998 era Justice League pinup book.
Okay.
Or just book of like big illustrations.
Yeah.
So they booked both me and Adams to do pinups, and they're going to print them side by side. And the one thing they insisted on more than anything was on Adam's side, he had to sign it here. Yep. And on my side, I had to sign it here. So it said aha going across.
That's close. That's that.
Yeah. Yeah. But Adam had to drop out of the project.
Oh.
So you can still find my illustration with the signature in the corner set up so Adam could start off the joke and I could finish it.
Well, then you should have gotten two pieces in there, so it could have been haha. So you're gonna really that should have been a rider.
Actually, there is now a young comic book artist named Robin Ha.
Okay.
She as far as we know, she's completely unrelated to me, though she's also Korean American.
Okay.
She author of Cook Korean and also of Almost American Girl, a memoir comic.
Oh, cool.
And now I really want to do side by side pinups with her.
You've got to do a haha thing. There's got to be a haha out there eventually. It's I mean, you come fully baked in with a thing to become with your name, so you're lucky. So I mean, like we were talking about like going from, being a penciler to being a fully sort of rendered artist and, hand done techniques, and obviously in Photoshop. Like, how do you how has the transition been for you? I mean, like, are you like a lover of Photoshop, or are you like it's an ends to a means?
I like Photoshop for painting, but for some reason I've never been able to draw in it.
Okay.
It's not even so much Photoshop. It's that Cintiq.
Mm-hmm.
I just on Cintiq and Wacom tablets, I've never been good at drawing in them. So like you can see here, I've been the thing I held up that I was drawing on is an iPad Pro.
Okay.
It's got a jet pen matte protector from Japan on it to give it kind of like a paper-like texture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And for some reason, maybe it's the thinness of it's how close the LED screen is to the glass it's underneath or something, or the reaction time, but it just feels more natural. Okay. So yeah, I'm very happy drawing on that.
Okay. Are you drawing in Procreate or Photoshop? What's your preferred?
Procreate.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The level of tools out there, it's amazing to see how these digital tools are advancing at such a rate. Like I've been using Clip Studio. I picked that up maybe like, I don't know, a year ago. I don't know. I can't remember anymore. I mean, we lost a whole year of our lives, so I can't remember whether it was last year or the year before.
I don't even remember.
But that, like, as a tool goes, like for drawing, I find that to be a much more preferable tool for drawing than Photoshop was for doing that and for inking.
Yeah.
But Photoshop has so many sort of tools that work for coloring that I really still prefer that as my go-to.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I hear so many good things about Procreate. That, like, it seems to me if I was 20 trying to get in this business, I would just have the iPad Pro and just work that way. It just seems.
Yeah. Oh, I should mention also, in physical media, I really like depending on having thick, thin control with a brush tip.
Yeah.
So whether it's a Winsor Newton Series 7 or it's I really love the Copic Mark brush tips.
Oh, yeah.
Markers. But I've never found a digital tool where I can do that. And part of the reason I can draw in Procreate is because I'm not trying to control thick, thin anymore.
Right.
And I'm using a pencil tip and I just fade out the line instead of thick thinning it. And like 2 weeks ago, I was trying to actually do a thick, thin line drawing because it had to be for a t-shirt. And I realized, oh man, I hate this. I hate trying to do this on an iPad Pro. I can show you the illustration here, and it just killed me trying to get it done, because trying to get this is for our science fiction convention. Okay. I drew their mascot.
Yep.
Wow.
And cool. Trying to get this thick, thin line like that turned out to be just brutally difficult. It was taking like 3 times as long doing it on the iPad Pro for me than it would on paper.
And it's interesting. I would love this is an interesting subject. I would love to see talk to different people who I consider really kind of exceptional sort of inkers when it comes to a brush. I don't know if Brian Stelfreeze is doing work on a tablet. Like, I don't know if he's doing a digital environment.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he's so good with physical media. I mean, like a few years ago, he posted some life drawings he did in watercolor paints done in class on paper. And I was kind of like, man, he's like one of those, those samurais from one of those movies. They're just like, I live for my art, and my art is the sword. But in his case, it happens to be paint and ink. And it's just like, he is such a focused Zen artist guy, just always trying to master his skill. It's like, he's so good.
No, he's so good. And I mean, I don't know, because like, I know that like Michael Golden, like he's been using digital stuff for a long time. So he's been using, the Cintiqs for years, but like it was 2 years ago. Yeah. So 2 years ago we were talking, he's like, I'm getting rid of my table setup. And I was like, I'm just going to go onto an iPad. And I was like, oh, okay. So like, he was all excited about this whole thing. And then like 6 months later, I'm like, so how's that going? And he's like, I did like 4 or 5 covers. And he's like, nah, I don't like, I'm not doing it anymore, because he was having a hard time getting the files to sort of be press ready for the way that he wanted them to be press ready.
Yeah.
So, because they don't have the same sort of control that like Photoshop does. Like, you can really do a lot of pre-press work on Photoshop. So, but he was still getting like, the line work still looked like Golden line work, but once again, he's at a different level than the rest of us mortals. So we just kind of have to go, okay, so you're doing your thing and we're all beating sticks against rocks here.
Yeah. I cannot draw in the classic Gene Haas style on an iPad Pro. I can still kind of copy it on paper. It helps if I draw bigger now because my eyes aren't the same, but yeah.
Oh, dude, what's up with that? That's not fair. Like this is not fair.
When I was in my probably about 35, 36 years old, I was talking to my optometrist saying, you think it's too late I feel like LASIK technology's got good enough. Maybe we should do it in a few years. I was holding off until it got good enough. And he's like, well, if you want to do it, you better do it now, because in 4 years, your lenses are going to harden your eyes, and it's not going to be you're going to still have to wear glasses. And it's like,
no.
That's going to happen? It's like, yeah, this happens to everybody. It's like, I had no idea. And then it turned out to be true. And like a few years later, I got into the bifocal age. I don't have my bifocals with me right now, but I'm wearing my drawing glasses. But it was like, oh man, yeah, I can no longer just lean in close to the paper to see the detail. And that killed me. That was the basis of my style early on.
I mean, like having that sort of ability to get like, that micro lens focus
2 inches away from the piece of paper.
Because like, I mean, like, you're sitting there at your drawing table drawing, and next thing, like you sort of like stand back and you can look yourself, and like you have moved your head right up against the stupid, piece of paper, and you're like, I'm like, sit back, relax.
It's like zooming in and zooming out in Photoshop.
Yeah. But in real life, the thing is, I mean, if I do it now, if I did it then, I could just see in super detail. Now, if I lean in closer than the focus of my glasses and my eyes, it just gets blurry. I'm just looking at super close, and that's blurry.
Exactly.
So it doesn't do any good. Though it does strike me at some point, maybe I'll go back to physical media if I get some of those jewelers magnifying glasses, and just with 3 different magnification levels I can put on it.
You become like a character from a French, like film at that point. That's fine.
I can become the eye engineer from the original Blade Runner movie.
Exactly. That dude. That guy was great. I felt so sorry for him, and they were so like, do you think he lived? Do you think they killed him?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, once they took off his jacket, he was just doomed. So yeah.
That's true. That was no good. Yeah, because they started pulling the hoses off his jacket, and he was done for. That's a sad story. We should have that.
That's a sad story.
So you also, like, you've mentioned it, and I'm gonna veer here because I'm curious. You've dropped these little things out there, and I will throw it out there. And I am a longtime gamer, and when I say gamer, I don't mean using my thumbs. I'm talking about rolling dice, character sheets. I'm talking LARPing, when LARPing even wasn't considered uncool. It was unknown. And so I'm an inveterate. I haven't gamed much anymore, but I'm a longtime gamer. So many of my friends are in the gaming industry. It's silly. Were you a gamer, or are you a gamer? Like, what's the...
Yeah, I was a gamer even after I dropped out of comics for a little bit in middle school. I stayed as a big D&D fan. Then actually one of the things that drew me back into comics was also the publication of Villains and Vigilantes.
Oh, yeah.
Super role-playing game.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then for a few decades I fell out of role-playing games after I got into comics, but then I got back into it a few years ago, and after I get done with my current deadlines, I am going to play a big D&D game with my friends and murder the assassin who killed my aunt.
Oh, wow. Vengeance will be yours, Gene.
Yeah. I have a halfling rogue.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I have, like, my gaming buddies, from college are always like, we got to get the band back together, kind of thing. So maybe I'll do like a long weekend kind of thing.
Wait a minute. I should mention this also. So part of the problem with doing a role-playing game is getting somebody to volunteer to be the referee or the game master or the dungeon master, who's going to prep the adventure, make the maps, create the stat blocks for all the non-player characters, the GM characters. And the current new thing inside of tabletop role-playing game design is no prep games.
Oh, really?
And essentially the experience is a bit like being in a TV writer's room, where everyone sits around the table and contributes to the situation, but you each have a character, and each character has kind of like listed, say, drives, flaws, things that energize them, things that suck energy from them, and stuff like that. So like, it's like you have a character who's like bursting with secrets, and therefore, if you want to recharge your character so they can do cool things later, you have to make an embarrassing confession to another one of the players. And it's which is a bit like a TV thing, like, oh yeah, this character's theme is that he has to come up with do whatever. But the part of the design of these games is nobody preps anything. You have like some prompts in the game, and then everyone builds what the adventure is while you're sitting around the table.
That's super interesting to me. It's sort of similar to LARPing in the terms that, like, there is nobody walking around with you saying, you see this, or you do that, or this is what happens. Like, you kind of, you're with people and everybody's kind of interacting, but then they send out NPCs that you do interact with. But I love the idea that's fascinating. We have to look that up. That's pretty cool.
So I mentioned my friend Lowell Francis earlier, who brought me back to comic books when I was in middle school. He is currently one of the top administrators at the Gauntlet.
Okay.
So look up Gauntlet RPG. It's an online community that often does a lot of online gaming with a lot of low prep, no prep, and very super modern role-playing game design games. And you can just play games with them online.
That's cool.
Like this Zoom interview.
Right, exactly.
Really? Okay, let me give you an example of one of the games.
All right, fire away.
I haven't played it, but it sounds so fascinating to me. I can't remember the exact name. It's something like Emily is Missing or something. So everyone plays the game inside of a text message group on your actual phones.
Sure.
On your actual mobile phones. And essentially the game starts with a prompt that everyone gets a role of, like, Emily's best friend, a boy who has a crush on Emily, Emily's older brother, sister, whatever. And you're all just texting back and forth, trying to figure out what happened to Emily.
Right.
And as you come up with discoveries, there's like each character has certain like secrets, blah, blah, blah. You spend like an hour or two just texting back and forth what you discovered based on who your character is and what your secret prompts are and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Developing the situation. There's no GM. You're just, again, texting on the phone, and it just gets very tense apparently, and it's super dramatic.
Oh, that's cool. It's like those how to what a murder mystery party thing, but now it's like you're only in the text world, which that's kind of cool. And I mean, and the limitations of texting, which was where you can't really read tone so well. Yeah. So it probably helps with what you were saying, that whole tension factor. It probably gets ratcheted up.
Yeah, and I mean, because of the prompts in the game, I don't know I haven't played the game, but everybody has secrets.
For sure, right.
So you can't totally trust anybody else in the game.
Right. That's pretty cool. I listen. I love mysteries. Like, I mean, like I was blown away with Knives Out. Like I love this kind of that kind of world of whodunits and all that kind of junk. So that's cool. I'm gonna look it up. I'm gonna find out these no prep games and see, and then find another way to waste my time.
Again, it will be less time wasted than say a Dungeons and Dragons game.
Yeah, because... it's a great way to waste your time, Gene, is to run a Kickstarter. Because
good lead in.
We launched our Kickstarter on Thanksgiving, and it goes until December 25th. So we have like Thanksgiving to Christmas, and it's an overload to say the least. And and we're not even going for broke. We're just like, hey, we just want to get $1,500 to get this comic book out to people because we made a real fun comic with a bunch of people.
I'm going to tell you some, this, but I'm going to, for everyone else out there who doesn't know about running a Kickstarter.
Yeah.
The rule of thumb for a Kickstarter, and this may have gotten even worse since I did my one Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
You spend at least a month before the Kickstarter prepping for it.
Yeah.
You spend the whole month of the Kickstarter running it.
We're doing that.
And then you spend at least 1 month, probably more, fulfilling the Kickstarter afterwards. And if you have like, say, a $70,000, Kickstarter, that brings in that much funds. I kept on getting this reaction of like, when I did my Kickstarter, oh, you made a lot of money in that Kickstarter in just a month. And it's kind of like, it's more than a month.
Yeah.
And 80 to 90% of the money is just going to fulfill the Kickstarter.
Right.
There's almost no profit.
Nothing in your
that's
pocket.
Just barely paying me for the time I'm putting into it.
Like, you know what it is? You can just liken it to prosciutto. You're just shaving off a little bit of something that you can have, and the rest of it, goes back to the machine. So
very much like being an artist. If you're being a Kickstarter person, is something you don't do because you want to get rich. You're doing it because you want to see something become real.
I love this project. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Like, this project came where it's the United Forces crash over. So with guests early on, Gary started drawing his characters into their comic book worlds.
Oh,
so so for Nick Cagnetti, who's in the book, he has a comic book called Pink Lemonade, and so like he would create what we were calling mosh-ups, where he would just mosh up his characters into these other worlds, and they were hilarious and they're fun. And then Gary is like, I don't think you even mentioned it to me. You were like,
I didn't.
You're like, hey, I asked these people if they want to do a comic. I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. And so eventually we kind of got around to like talking about it and doing it. And, next thing you know, we have like, a story, which is 5 different chapters with all, with Nick Cagnetti, with Bradley Littlejohn for Wiltworthy, Blake Seals with Evil Monkey Man, and Amanda Semler with Yeti or Not. And it's like, so I wrote this storyline which takes Gary's characters through an adventure of these worlds, and then let each creator do this sort of 6-page chunk of whatever happens. I'm like, here's what happens at the beginning, here's what happens at the end. You figure out what happens in the middle.
That's brilliant.
Yeah,
so it's a jam piece. That's great.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
It's a complete jam piece, and it was a lot of fun. And so, it's up, and it's doing well. It could always do well, better. Yes, better. That's
better. I think it's doing great.
Yeah. So, it's been a hoot, and but it's it is a lot of work. We're
it is the most epic jam piece I've ever heard of. So yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it's nuts, and I have a client of mine who makes it's a gaming company, Dwarven Forge. They make all these.
Oh,
yeah. So like my friend is the creative director for that. So I write copy for them for their stuff, and I also do some design work. Did you see the movie The Dwarvenaut?
Mm-mm.
Okay, you should check it out. Look up the Dwarvenaut. It's on Netflix, I think, still, but you can find it online. And
I'm going to type it in. Keep talking.
Yeah. So I designed the title copy and the poster and DVD cover for that thing. And but anyway, they do all their annual business on Kickstarter. And so, I mean, listen, we're not asking for big chunks here, but these guys are doing $6 million at a pop for their things, and the pressure, Gene, is unbelievable for those people. Because it's their nut. This is it, but they do a great job. So I hope we have 1/1000th of their success.
Dwarvenaut.
The Dwarvenaut. Yep, there it is. Yeah. So it's hilarious. That's the one there, man. Yeah, check it out. It's really good. Yeah, that's my logo type right there. That's me. I did that. But speaking of, you said that you're going to do a game, but something is in the way between you and this game, and you've got a project coming out in the near future.
Yeah, I think so. Phil Jimenez and writer Kelsey DeConnick just came out with I believe it's just out. I haven't been to the comic shop lately.
It is today.
Oh, it is today. Okay. Wonder Woman Historia: The Amazons Volume 1.
Correct.
Which is I'm literally one of the top best comic graphic novels ever from the American industry. It's amazing.
It's unbelievable. Phil knocked out, we had him on the show 2-3 weeks ago, just knocked it out of the park.
Yeah. It's literally as if Stanley Kubrick and Alexander McQueen got together and decided to design a comic book together with Kelsey DeConnick.
That's beautiful. I love that. That's perfect.
Yeah, it's obsessive and beautiful, and I've never seen anyone try to accomplish the ambition he had and the time he took to do it. He took forever to draw his pages.
And he did it all on his iPad Pro, I think.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, he did it all on the iPad Pro. It's ridiculous. I mean, it is so bloody showy. I don't know what to say. I have no nice things to say about it because it's so damn good. No, I mean, Phil put everything into that.
And I got to be the guy who follows him onto the stage with Volume 2.
Nice, right. Yeah, your Journey after Van Halen opened up for Journey on their 78 tour. So good luck. So how Kelly Sue's coming on in January, I think. So she's coming on to talk about the project. I guess we'll try to get everybody on,
I'm going to say the story is just as ambitious as the art. She has a deep love for all of Wonder Woman's history, and she finds a way to pretty much integrate all of it into a story that changes the meaning of everything, every version of you've read before.
God.
You get to read the history again, but there's twists and gods in the background taking actions that change the meaning of every action. It is so heartbreaking. It is such a beautiful, heartbreaking story. It's just beautiful. Every version of Wonder Woman that's come before, except Zeus being the father.
Okay.
The movie stuff, that doesn't count. The comic book stuff all counts.
Okay. So you're Volume 2. But you're not the Amazons. So what is your?
It's still the Amazons, but it's Volume 2 of that.
Okay. So it's the Amazons Volume 2. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and then there's going to be Amazons Volume 3. And actually, I think Kelly Sue has talked about this publicly. If she ever gets a chance, she would love to do another trio of stories, and then another trio of stories. So there's a total of 9 volumes.
Wow. Well, I mean, and I keep saying it, and I'm a Marvel fanboy, but I keep saying it, is that DC, what they're doing with Black Label is really changing the game. They're doing what I think we'd always hoped Marvel would have done with Epic, in terms of taking their properties and doing something special with their properties. Like, while they made great stuff with Epic, don't get me wrong, it wasn't Marvel Comics.
Well, I mean, in a way, kind of like the Marvel Knight stuff in the early 2000s.
Sure.
Yeah, it's not quite the same, but it's kind of a similar thing of rethinking how the industry is and stuff like that, and what you can do in it. Because essentially the Marvel Knight stuff became the template for the Marvel comics we know today. which also became the template very quickly for all the movies that came out.
Yeah, it became, well, I guess, it was very smart on Joe and Jimmy's, they're like, we want to tell these stories, but we're not going to get the editorial support to do it. Yeah. So, hey, can we do it in our own little fake playground? And they're like, whatever, have fun, kids, and like, turns out the kids were right. So when did you get on board with this, and like how long of a process? Because we had Cliff on talking about his book, his Catwoman series, and how much work he's put into that. So that's taken him like years now.
Yeah.
So.
I think it probably was it 2018. I was at Heroes Con, and Kelly Sue wasn't there, but her husband was. Who Matt Fraction said, "Hey, you know who wants to work with you?" And it's like, "You?" Well, yeah, but actually, the important one is Kelly Sue DeConnick. So I still haven't actually had a conversation with her in person, but he then began pitching me in her stead of like some cool stuff she wanted to do, and that's how I got on board.
Oh my God, that's hilarious! That's so great that have the husband going around being the pitch man. I love it.
Yeah.
Smart move on her half.
She trained a good assistant.
Yeah, well, hey, and if you can have an assistant as good with the words as he is, that's not bad. That's fantastic. So you were sort of primed, like he incepted you in 2018, and then like, so how did the whole thing come together for you? Like, was this a sort of a call on the phone with her, and then a call on the phone with editorial, and
it was mainly with her, and then once she it was, and mainly through email.
Yeah.
And once she convinced me, like the scale of the project, that actually didn't take long at all. I mean, she just kind of described what she was doing, what Phil were doing, and it's kind of like, oh yeah. And I am also completely intimidated by what Phil's doing. And then I got to see what she was planning, and it was kind of like, man, this is all so insanely ambitious. And if you read volume 1, you can see part of the reason wasn't just that I heard their vision, it's that I got to see it become reality.
Yeah.
And he already had like half the pages mostly done by the time I saw it. And I was kind of like, I've never seen a comic book like this. And in a way, this doesn't even feel American. It's just so.
It doesn't. You're right.
Nonchalant, epic, but beyond, kind of with a bigger, more heartbreaking story than you usually see, more thought out story, a more heartfelt American story than you usually get from a European comic book.
Right. Yeah. It has the same trappings. There's a binding, there's pages, there's artwork on there, but it is very different feeling than what we're seeing in general. So I mean, Phil only did the black and white artwork with a little bit of color work in there on things that like were sort of, he was figuring he would never be able to actually like say do this. Are you doing the coloring on this as well?
No, but if you saw this, I'm going to hold it up again because it's in this kind of the same style.
Yeah.
If you saw the Omar, the terrible illustration I did, it's kind of in that style.
Yeah.
Let me see.
So are you delivering a gray tone? Is that what you're kind of doing?
Yeah, it's an iPad Pro, and I'm doing a gray tone. Here's a different illustration I did for something. Okay.
Yeah.
This is not a historic illustration, but it's in a style a lot like this.
Okay. Very cool, man.
But I cannot show you the artwork yet at all.
I know. Gary's going to hold it against you, but I won't. But yeah, it's super. That the word ambitious is really what I would say describes a whole Black Label approach. And I think what Kelly Sue has done here is another level of ambition in the work. I think Cliff is being ambitious in a way that he's thumbing his nose at every other creator by saying, I'm doing everything. So take that, like that's that, because nobody gets to do that. No one gets to do the whole thing. And then, what is that? Have you read Human Target yet?
Oh, no, I haven't.
Oh my God, dude. It just came out like last month or this month or whatever. Get issue 1 of Human Target, man. Like Tom King and why am I blanking on his name? Oh, come on. He's the guy who did the really great Moon Knight run. I don't know. It doesn't matter. It matters because he matters, but it doesn't matter. I think I may have it here. I don't know. Anyway, it's so good. There we go. Greg Smallwood. There you go.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's super good. You know, if you're a fan of like 50s and 60s illustration, Greg is just channeling all that kind of beauty in the work. So, you were brought on board in 2018, and like, how many pages is the volume?
64, and I still have 6 pages to go.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so getting pretty close. And then my schedule's got a mess because I've taken some things I scheduled for after I got done for December. When I get done with Historia, have crashed into me not finishing Historia on the time schedule I expected. So.
Oh my gosh. So.
And then C2E2.
And then, who are you getting? Do you know who's coloring is it going to be a single color source?
We're bringing a colorist on board, but he needs to do one test page before I can officially announce it.
Okay. Yeah. Oh no, I was just curious, is like, because like for Phil, it ended up being a bunch of different colorists, doing different pieces. And then is Clayton doing the lettering in the book?
I have no idea who the letterer is at this point.
I think Clayton did the lettering for volume 1. So I'm just wondering if he did for volume 2.
I'm assuming it's going to be the same guy.
He's great. I mean, he's really like, he's really just a phenomenal letterer, like to the point where you go like, who's lettering this? Like, it's that good kind of work. So super exciting. So do you know when that volume 2, like, spring
next year.
So spring. Cool. Awesome. That's super exciting, man. Cause I think how does it, I guess the question is, how does it feel to be a part of like something that is so sort of like transcendent in scope?
This is going to sound a little ridiculous, but I want to say this is honestly how I feel. I feel like I'm the guy, I'm one of the people doing the wiring inside the Apollo 11 capsule for the navigation system.
Yeah.
Where it's like the big star people are going to still be the ones who created Volume 1, Kelly Sue and Phil.
Mm.
And I need to make sure that if I screw up, the mission's going to fail at some point. So I need to make sure I don't screw up.
That's a great way to put a lot of pressure on yourself, but it's also super clear. That's cool. So you wrote. You've written stuff. You did May.
May. Yeah. MAE.
Yeah. Are you doing any more work that you're going to be writing? And
not immediately. I was actually. I was working on a project where I was going to write it myself. It was going to be for the middle grade or YA market as a graphic novel.
Yep.
And then I had a conversation. I was on a panel in Baltimore with a writer who does middle YA graphic novels.
Mm-hmm.
And she was so impressed with how she talked about stuff that I read her books immediately afterward. I'm not going to name the names, but if you really want to research it, you can figure this out pretty easily from online resources. And then I read some of the books she'd done, and it was like, wow, she is not just talking the talk; she is writing the walk. They were fantastic. And I contacted her and said, "Hey, would you like to try to maybe collaborate on something someday?" And she said, "Okay, let's think about it." So we're actually going to hang out, hopefully at C2E2, and see if anything comes from that. Cool. Fingers crossed. But yeah, but that kind of blew up my plan of writing something myself, because I threw an idea at her and she's like, "Oh, let's play with that." But she will write it, and she will then twist it in ways that'll make it unrecognizable from the pile of note cards I have pinned to a piece of cardboard inside my studio.
Whatever works. Which
if she doesn't do that, that would be wrong. It's her job to make it her own.
Right.
So if she decides to go forward with this with me.
Yeah, we had Hope Larson on a couple of months ago, and she's just a brilliant, writer with her YA graphic novels. And we also had Rebecca Mock, who is our artist for a bunch of these. And it's a great great market in I don't know what you want to call it, but I mean, like, I love the single story graphic novel. I love that we have these now. We need more of them. Like, we need more ways of telling concise stories to readers rather than just ongoing epics, which are fine, but I think we need to have both.
And just having, and this is the dream we had in comics in the 90s of like, okay, there's a certain point where I can't remember his name right now, the guy from the Savage Dragon was arguing the reason we do superheroes in American comics is because it is the perfect subject matter for a comic book. There's nothing better you can do with a comic book than tell a superhero story. And yeah, you can try to, occasionally people can tell a great story about something that's not a superhero in American comics, but it's not necessarily worth the effort. And I don't think it's where the industry's headed. And this was a serious discussion in the 90s.
Yeah.
And the explosion of YA and middle grade graphic novels now, were like literally in a single year, 10% or more of every 10% of all graphic novel sales will literally be Dogman, Dav Pilkey Dogman graphic novels about a man with a dog head making poop jokes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's brilliant. It is really well done poop jokes.
It's good.
Yeah. Well, that's I think it was one of those things where, like, when you do see things like, the manga world, or you see the European world, like the breadth of stories that are being told is endless, and we need that here.
Yeah, I'll say I love the European album market and I love the manga market, but something that's really important to note is both of those industries are shrinking.
Oh, really?
And they have been for decades. Yeah.
Interesting.
It's like Japan is literally running out of young people.
Well, okay, that's true.
Literally.
Right.
Yeah, literally. And that means you have less young artists creating brilliant ideas. You have too many people at the top management of comic book companies saying, why do we need to make opportunities for young people? You don't have enough young readers. Europe also, if you talk to a European comics writer or comics artist, they'll talk about how if you're not on a franchise of something like doing Asterix comics or something like that, it's hard to get a new property actually published in Europe, no matter how brilliant the idea.
Well, let's hope the YA market, just keep sort of is the supporting, backbone for a while, as we can, creators can develop more and more out there, and hopefully, sort of challenge the paradigm. We don't want, we're not talking about destroying the thing. We just want to offer more for the world.
I mean, and also we're every year we're creating new properties, and the kids are saying more. Yeah. More. And this is not happening anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, no, it's super exciting, and there's a whole breadth of creators out there who, like, honestly, who knew where they came from, which I'm totally fine with, because it's like there's an avenue for this creation to come.
Well, we have all this sprouting of these new comics talents coming up right now who grew up on some superhero stuff, but also a lot of Raina Telgemeier and Jeff Smith Bone comics.
Right. Yep.
And without these people, and Gene Luen Yang, without those three people like that, we'd still be a shrinking industry, because we wouldn't have new creators and we wouldn't have the new readers. Yeah, and we and like, I mean, what is it that oh, come on, what was the thing that old brain can't remember, but we're getting the book that Sean Phillips just did this last year. They did a graphic novel. Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips did. Oh, yeah. Right, I'm blanking on the title, but anyway, they're doing the grown-up versions of these books, and they're doing well, and we just need to keep kind of like putting that out there, because there's such an opening for this. And I think, a 64-page, Wonder Woman epic, that's a big statement. These are not small, monthly, stapled comics that were, which are my, they're what I read all the time. So I think it's great. We won't hold you up any longer. Quick question. If you were an action figure, what 3 accessories would you have? Oh, well, I mean, somewhere in the studio, for reflection reference, I have a Silver Surfer figure. So a flying surfboard would be awesome. Okay, that's awesome. That's a pretty good one. Let me see. Action figure. Man. A small, tiny. Hold on a second.
He's gonna show it.
Yeah. This happens to be a bottle of sake, but it doesn't have to be sake. A small bottle of liquor. Okay. Small liquor bottle. Awesome. That's perfect. Flying surfboard, bottle of liquor.
He's gonna be drunk while he's surfing.
Well, it doesn't mean he has to be
space. That's awesome.
Okay, wait a minute. Also, there was one musician where I began following her career because I thought the first cover I ever saw of one of her albums lying around in a friend's room was so awesome.
Okay.
Nico Case's it's like This Storm Loves You. I can't remember the name of the album right now.
Yeah.
But anyway, she's on an old Plymouth muscle car, crouched on the hood, holding an actual sword.
Do you want the card or do you want the car or the sword, Gene?
Oh, the girl.
Oh, sword. So yeah,
the girl.
The black, magic sword.
Okay.
I mean, or it could be a glowing baseball. Actually, glowing baseball bat. That's even better.
Okay, glowing baseball bat.
Oh, now you're talking to me.
Flying and a bottle of liquor.
Dude, that action figure is gonna sell gangbusters. I love it. That's fantastic. Well,
that's sweet.
So C2E2, K9, next weekend, not this weekend, but next weekend.
Silver Surfer surfboard.
Look for the Silver Surfboard floating above.
Kevin Matchstick's glowing bat.
Yep.
Yeah. Also, there's the album cover. Middle Cyclone by Nico Case.
There you go.
And
yeah.
Nice. Is that a Valiant or is that a Barracuda?
I'm not sure.
It's either a Valiant or
Barracuda. I just created this whole story in my head of like, oh, she's on an intelligent car like Knight Rider.
Oh, yeah.
And then she crouches on the hood with her magic sword. And then I was like filling this whole post-apocalyptic story of who the character was.
Hold on to that for your YA graphic novel, your own writing.
You're going to write this.
So, and then everyone can look forward to seeing Wonder Woman or Historia Wonder Woman Volume 2. The Amazons reorder those words to the right order in your own mind in the spring. And it was great talking with you, Gene. I really appreciate you taking the time. We'll shake hands when we can shake hands at a convention near you one day.
Rub elbows.
Yeah, rub elbows or whatever we do. But good luck with the last 6 pages. Fingers crossed.
And good luck with the Kickstarter. I mean, if you're listening, I mean, I'm assuming you're also one of those Kickstarters where there's a little tip jar saying, even if you're not going to purchase something, we love the goodwill. And if you just want to put in $2 or $5 to help out, make this happen.
Anything helps out because we're, we're working with some great young indie creators. And I'm just, I want them to have a success and to have something that they can feel comfortable doing. Cause I think it's, Gary and I would do this regardless. I think it's just a matter of like, we want everyone to feel rewarded for the time that they've put into this.
Yeah.
So, man, well, really appreciate it. It's great to meet you and to have a great, what is it, Tuesday? Have a great night.
Oh yeah.
All right.
And to everyone out there, see you later.
All right, everyone, take care. Like, subscribe, follow Gene. Go Gene Ha Comics or find him at Gene Ha somewhere.
GeneHa.com.
And GeneHa.com. He's out there. He's available. Everyone, we will see you next week. Until then, ciao.